Richard Smallwood's music has always done something rare. It did not simply entertain, and it did not merely inspire. It carried people through grief, faith, struggle, and hope. So when news of his passing reached the public, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Across churches, choirs, and homes around the world, one question quietly surfaced. How would the life of a man who shaped modern gospel music be honored in his final farewell? For many, this was not just about a funeral. It was about closure, gratitude, and understanding how the gospel community would come together to honor someone whose songs had become part of worship itself. As speculation grew, so did curiosity about who would attend, where the service would take place, and how Richard Smallwood's legacy would be remembered publicly. Richard Smallwood passed away on December 30, 2025, at the age of 77. According to statements released by his family, his death followed complications related to kidney failure. His passing was described as peaceful, with loved ones by his side. The announcement immediately prompted an outpouring of tributes from gospel musicians, church leaders, educators, and fans who had grown up with his music as a spiritual foundation. Yet even in the days following the announcement, details surrounding his funeral were limited. That silence was intentional. Those close to Smallwood understood that his life deserved reflection before ceremony. His story was not one of headlines, but of devotion, discipline, and faith expressed through music that transcended generations. To understand why his funeral has drawn such widespread attention, it is important to understand who Richard Smallwood was beyond the stage. He was not only a composer and pianist. He was a teacher, mentor, and spiritual guide. His music blended classical training with gospel tradition, creating compositions that were technically rich and emotionally powerful. Songs like Total Praise, I Love the Lord, and The Center of My Joy were not written to chase popularity. They were written to serve worship. Over time, these songs became staples in churches around the world, sung during moments of celebration, prayer, and mourning. For many believers, Smallwood's music was not background sound. It was a language of faith. Through his ensembles, the Richard Smallwood Singers and later Vision, he created spaces where musical excellence and spiritual discipline coexisted. These groups were known not only for their sound, but for their precision, integrity, and purpose. Many of today's prominent gospel musicians credit Smallwood as a formative influence in their lives. His impact extended beyond church walls. When Whitney Houston recorded I Love the Lord for The Preacher's Wife soundtrack, Smallwood's music reached audiences who might never have stepped into a gospel choir rehearsal. That moment helped bridge sacred and mainstream spaces, proving that gospel music could carry depth, sophistication, and universal emotional power. As news of his passing spread, tributes poured in from across the gospel world. Choir directors spoke of his uncompromising standards. Musicians recalled his insistence on excellence. Worship leaders described how his music taught them that faith and artistry were not opposites but partners. These reflections painted a picture of a man who demanded much not out of ego, but out of reverence for the calling he believed music represented. Naturally, attention began to shift toward his final farewell. Fans wanted to know how his life would be honored. Would the service be public or private? Would there be musical tributes? Would the gospel community gather in one place to say goodbye? At this stage, it is important to note that the family approached these questions with care. Rather than releasing immediate details, they focused first on mourning privately and ensuring that any public remembrance would reflect Smallwood's values. This decision aligned with the way he lived. Richard Smallwood was deeply committed to purpose over spectacle. The format chosen for his farewell reflects that philosophy. Instead of a traditional funeral centered solely on mourning, plans were made for a celebration of life. This distinction matters. A celebration of life emphasizes gratitude, reflection, and the impact of a person's journey. For someone whose music consistently pointed people toward hope, this approach felt appropriate. As anticipation continued, discussions began about who might attend. While no official guest list was released, it was widely understood that the service would draw prominent figures from the gospel music community. Choir directors, composers, pastors, and vocalists who had worked with or been influenced by Smallwood were expected to be present. These were not celebrity appearances for attention, but expressions of respect. Many of these individuals viewed Smallwood as a mentor, whether personally or through his work. His influence shaped rehearsal rooms, music departments, and worship services across denominations. At the same time, the family made it clear that this farewell would not be turned into a media event. While the service would allow public participation, the tone would remain dignified and reverent. This balance between openness and restraint reflects the man being honored. As viewers follow this story, it becomes clear that the interest surrounding Richard Smallwood's funeral is not driven by curiosity alone. It is driven by connection. His music accompanied people through some of the most meaningful moments of their lives. Saying goodbye feels personal, even for those who never met him. Throughout his career, Smallwood emphasized preparation, discipline, and humility. He often spoke about music as ministry, not performance. That philosophy continues to shape how his life is being honored. Every detail of the farewell has been approached with intention. Now, after weeks of reflection and anticipation, the confirmed details of Richard Smallwood's celebration of life have been respectfully shared. The public celebration of life for Richard Smallwood will take place on Saturday, January 24, 2026, at First Baptist Church of Glenarden International, located in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. The service is scheduled to begin at 12:00 noon Eastern Time, with doors opening to the public at 9:30 a.m. to accommodate attendees. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Precious Memories Funeral Home. This service will provide an opportunity for members of the gospel community, worshipers, musicians, and admirers to come together and honor a life devoted to faith and musical excellence. While specific musical participants have not been publicly listed, it is expected that the service will reflect Smallwood's legacy through carefully selected performances and tributes. Regarding burial, the family has chosen to keep those details private, reserving that moment for close relatives and loved ones. This decision underscores the balance they have maintained throughout this process, allowing public remembrance while preserving intimate family moments. Richard Smallwood's farewell is not defined by location or attendance alone. It is defined by the collective gratitude of those whose lives he touched. His music will continue to be sung long after the service concludes. Choirs will continue to rehearse his compositions. Worshippers will continue to find comfort and strength in his words and melodies. In the end, this celebration of life is not an ending, but a reflection of a legacy that lives on. Richard Smallwood's influence remains present in every voice lifted in worship, every choir striving for excellence, and every musician who believes that faith and artistry belong together. His final farewell brings people together not to say goodbye forever, but to say thank you.